my first ever tier list video, and this just feels a bit weird, man, because I've never done it before, but I've always wanted to do it, so it feels really nice to finally do. And yeah, we have a lot to talk about today, because this is a pool of the first 36 7-star characters. So I just had to make a list about it, because I was so interested in the pool, and honestly, I have my thoughts on this overall pool, and I'm going to say it in my nighttime series when I make my return to it later tonight or later tomorrow. And yeah, like the note said, this is based off of both usefulness and signature level reliance, because this is the first ever 7 stars, right? We don't have that many shards saved up. Like most regular players don't have that many shards saved up, so you can't just Titania these guys ASAP, right? So that's why some characters are a bit lower than you would think. For example, Killmonger, Domino as well. There's some that are pretty low, but I'm gonna explain all these characters pretty thoroughly. Well, the ones that need explaining anyway. I feel like there's some very oddball placements here, but I'm confident with all of my rankings pretty much, except for one or two maybe, but I'll address those first. But yeah, let's just not waste any time and let's get into it. Okay, so the ones that struggled with the most were probably Spider-Man Classic, Hawkeye, and Domino. I think it's those three. And here's the thing. So Hawkeye, everyone knows I love this guy so much, right? He's probably one of my favorite characters in the entire game. But this list, I just want to try to be unbiased, right? Not biased at all. And I feel like his placement here it's fine, because while he can do a lot, the things that he can do, he really isn't the best at any of it, right? He's kind of just the jack of all trades, master of none type of champion. And additionally, he kind of wants synergies for a lot of things he does, as well as just recall masteries to help really up his damage output. And you just can't always have access to that, in Battlegrounds and Alliance War, you can't always have those synergies or those masteries, right? So that's why I put him in tier 3, because I feel like he's still a good character. Most of the characters in tier 3 all have pretty decent value, but you just won't really use him for the most meta stuff, I feel like. In Battlegrounds, I don't use him that often. In Alliance War, I haven't used him in a very long time. So I feel like he's just still a very, promising champion, but it just depends on how much you want to use the guy, right? If you hate his mechanic of perfect release, then you probably will just put him in the tier 4. But if you want to, actually use him, I feel like he can be a tier 2 character for, a lot of players if they do give him the time and, the experience to learn the character. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Hawkeye. That's why I put him in tier 3, because it really just is up to the player on how they want to build this guy, But yeah, now let's talk about Spider-Man Classic, because I probably gonna get a lot of complaints about this one here. But Spider-Man Classic, I couldn't put him next to Joe Fix's Titania and Hulk, to be honest. I feel like he's more closer to Spider-Gwen, who is also a very good character, but I feel like they're both they belong in tier 3, because Spider-Gwen has access to slow, right? She has access to enervate. She has some pretty nice utility in those spectrums. Spider-Man Classic, he does have access to accelerate as well, but his takes a bit longer to get to. Spider-Gwen just has to do a heavy. Spider-Man just has to do 2 SP1s, which is very, very annoying, right? He has this taunt, so that's very, very good about him. His damage output is pretty serviceable as well. So I feel like they both just make very good tier 3 characters. And I feel like they aren't the best in Battlegrounds, and Hulk, Joe Fix, and Titania, they all have uses there. Joe and Titania have use in War as well, for sure. And Hulk is just probably the science king of Battlegrounds with how fast he is. So I feel like all Titania, Joe Fixit, and Hulk definitely deserve tier 2, and I feel like they are a tier above both Spider-Man and Spider-Gwen. So yeah, those are my thoughts on those couple of characters. Now let's start going over just individual characters. We'll start off with Bishop, who is the only tier 0 character in this list. And I put him there because I had a very big debate in my head on where he should go, either tier 1 or tier 0. But I decided tier 0 because I feel like he is just the mutant king of Battlegrounds. He is just absurd in almost every single meta, both on offense and defense, right? In Alliance War, he's not used as much, but there definitely can be use for him. I've noticed that there are a lot of good nodes for him in Alliance War. It just depends on your planners if they want to assign him, right? And at content, he's very good as well because of his anti-purify and just his overall very strong burst damage. So I feel like this guy just has a use literally everywhere. And his value isn't decreasing at all. If anything, it's increasing. So I feel like he's just a perfect tier 0 character. He doesn't need the signature ability at all, so that's why he's at tier 0, because he has no Sig reliance. He's just very good in both attack and defense, and he's just a very valuable character, I feel like. So yeah, Bishop, tier 0, the only tier 0 in this list, and now let's move on to the Overseer. Now, honestly, if you could count Sig 200s, I'd probably put Overseer in tier 0 as well. But Overseer, since it's just me Sig 20, I feel like he's still very, very good at Sig 20, but the maximum damage of him is kind of what makes him tier 0. So having a low Sig 1 is still very, very good. Even Unduplicity is pretty good as well. But, like, honestly, I don't even know if I put him tier 0, even if he had max Sig, because, like, that's where Scorpion and Torch are. I wouldn't say he's at that tier just yet, because those two are just so overpowered. But Overseer is a very solid character. He has use literally everywhere. In Battlegrounds, he's a great attacker and defender. And in Alliance War, he is used so much now. Like, he's probably, like, one of the most used science characters besides Scorpion, Human Torch. I feel like he is the easy number 3 science character in the entire game, but that's for another time, right? That's for another tier list, you know? But yeah, he has use literally everywhere. He's a very solid Alliance War attacker. He's a very solid Battlegrounds attacker. He's a good Battlegrounds defender. And also, he just has a lot of love by Kabam, I feel like, because he's always, like, an attacker tactic champion in Alliance War. And he's just, I don't know, I feel like he just hasn't aged badly at all. I feel like he just keeps getting better and better. So maybe, like, as time goes on, he'll go up to tier 0, but for now, I feel like he's a very solid tier 1 character. I feel like he is just the poster boy for tier 1, right? Like, a super good character, but just missing a little bit to be that tier 0, like, greatness, you know? So yeah, Overseer, very solid champion. I feel like he's just, is perfect for tier 1. And now let's talk about Sunspot. So Sunspot, he's a very, very, very good Battlegrounds attacker. Like, he is so crazy good in Battlegrounds. He can just do so many fights that you would never expect him to do. And while that is great, the even better part is, at Sig 0, he is still very, very good for that one role, which is just being an absolute Battlegrounds monster. And that's why I put him in tier 1, because he just has no signature alliance at all. Of course, like, he's good at Sig 200, but, like, Sig 0 is perfect for, like, Battlegrounds. He's a good story quester as well, because, like, his perfect block is just very, very nuts. He doesn't have the biggest utility kit out there, but the fact that he's such a, like, vital Battlegrounds attacker is why I put him in tier 1, right? And the fact that he doesn't need signature ability as well. It's just perfect. It's just very, very good overall. His utility is kind of light, like I said, but it just kind of gets offset by his overall value in, like, one of the most important pieces of content, and in, like, story questing as well. So yeah, just overall very solid champion. And now let's talk about America Chavez. So Chavez is a character that, like, I wasn't really a fan of up until I started playing High Tier Alliance War, because honestly, she gets used a lot in High Tier Alliance War. In Salty, the alliance that I'm in, we use her from time to time, but even, like, that time to time use, she does very, very well in what she does, right? She is a very good, just, like, overall control character. I feel like her usefulness might go down a little bit after Subdue goes away, because that's, like, all of her buff control pretty much. But she still does have some very good utility pieces, like her negative zone dimension, as well as, like, reducing the potency of, like, Pierce buffs. It's some very niche but very solid utility, I feel like. Her damage output is serviceable. It's not that great unless there's a lot of buffs on the champion. But when there are buffs, she just, like, goes absolutely haywire, I feel like. So yeah, I feel like she's a very good tier 2 character. Not quite tier 1 for me just yet, because she is pretty niche overall, I would say. She's not, like, a very general character. But yeah, she's still a pretty solid champion overall, I would say. And also, she's a good defender at Sig 0, so that's just perfect as well. She's a good dual threat, I feel like. And now let's talk about Dragon Man. So Dragon Man is the pool that I want the most, to be honest, because one, he is that character where, like, you might not want to rank for him with Catalyst, but, like, having him as a 7-star would just be amazing, right? Because it's a free rank 4 whenever you open the crystal. Like, you pull the champion, you put ice onto them, they're at the 6-star rank 4 level. And that is, like, perfect for Dragon Man, because I feel like he's a very solid character, but people, like, just put him kind of, like, lower on the priority list. But now that he has a 7-star, he can really just shine, because I feel like he's a very solid champion overall. You know, he has double immunities, he has a very quirky mystic kit. Like, you know, the corner mechanic is very good. His unstoppable is just insane with the regen overall. It is just crazy, crazy good. His damage output is very, very solid as well. I feel like at a 6-star rank 4 level, he'll be a very good Battlegrounds attacker and defender. So yeah, overall, I feel like this character is going to be very, very loved as a 7-star because of his no signature alliance. His overall usefulness is just very, very good. And I feel like he just has a lot of uses in some important pieces of content, you know? And, like, he had use in Eternity Pain as well. He had use just pretty much everywhere, I feel like. He's just a very solid champion overall. So, yeah, Dragon Man, easy tier 2. Now let's talk about Wiccan for a second. Now, Wiccan is an important one, and I might move him up a tier as we go on with this tier list, as 7 stars get released, because the stat focus is going to save this guy. His biggest problem was that he just had such low block efficiency and just such low health and physical resistance. But now with the stat focus, you can change that. You can give him increased block efficiency, so he just won't be like an absolute glass cannon, right? So that is the biggest thing about Wiccan that I did not like. And now that that's getting fixed with stat focus, he becomes a very promising character in my eyes, right? He's a very good Alliance War attacker. He's a very good just overall general quester with his neutralize and his very solid damage output in the right scenarios. He's just a very solid champion that has a very niche but valuable kit, especially with his neutralize. And also his just damage can be crazy good at times. His energy damage regen is also very potent. And he just has a lot going on for him. But the problem was, he was just such a glass cannon, man. But now he's not a glass cannon with stat focus. So that's why I put him in tier 2. I might move him up 1 tier because of how good stat focus can be to him. But yeah, we'll see how he ages as a 7 star. And now let's move on to Domino. Now Domino is an interesting one because at 6200 she's just a crazy good defender. At 6-0 she's just a fine attacker, I feel like. At 620 she can still be used as a defender for sure. But I put her at tier 2 because she can be very, very good. It just is all RNG dependent, right? You might not crit at all in your SP2, for example, and she becomes a tier 4 character, right? But if you do get the crits, she becomes as good as a tier 0 character. So that's why I put her in tier 2 as a compromise, because I feel like she can be very, very good, even unawakened as just a very solid battlegrounds attacker. But honestly, at this level, I would just use a 6-star rank 4 6200 Domino over the unduped 7-star. That's just me though. That's why I put her in tier 2 because I'm a bit conflicted with her. I feel like she can be tier 1 for sure, but it just depends on how she performs unawakened as a 7-star. We'll have to wait and see, but for now I put her in tier 2 and I feel like that's a good placement. Now Falcon is just a very good character overall. His the lock-on mechanic is still super valuable. He's so good in Alliance War and even in Battlegrounds sometimes, depending on the fight. Against Thing, he is my go-to Thing counter, and I love him versus Thing. He's such a good Thing counter, man. It's so good. His, defensive ability accuracy reduction is just crazy good. I feel like it'll never be, I feel like he just always has a place in the game because of his lock-on. His lock-on is just so valuable, and also his damage output is serviceable. Just a very good Battlegrounds and Alliance War attacker, I feel like. No defensive value, though, and he does want to be SIG 20, but SIG 20 is kind of, achievable for a 7-star. It's just the later SIGs that aren't really achievable. But yeah, overall, just a very solid kit. Just a very good mechanic that just has so much value overall. He counters so many things with this lock-on that it's absolutely absurd, and he deserves this tier 2 placement. I was debating tier 1, but I realized that he's kind of just a one-trick pony overall. And there are characters that do have that plus a little bit more. So that's why I put him tier 2 for now. And yeah, that's just going to stay how it is. Unless he just turns out to be super insane as a 7-star. Who knows, right? But now let's talk about Elsa Bloodstone. The Elsa Sims might hit me for this, but I feel like she is a good tier 2 character. Her damage output is very, very good for Battlegrounds. Her utility is okay, but it doesn't really make it utilized in Alliance War. She is a decent story quester as well. She doesn't have that much defensive use in Battlegrounds as well. So she's just pretty much a dedicated Battlegrounds attacker and maybe story quester as well. But her damage output is very, very good. She's very, very fun as well. She has a lot of interesting mechanics with her busted debuff and her weird parry. There's a lot of interesting things about the character, but I feel like she isn't a very meta champion, and I feel like she's just more of a fun character. But she's a fun but effective character, I feel like. So that's why she's in tier 2, right? Because she does have some use for sure. She doesn't need to be awakened in the slightest, so she has that going for her as well. So I feel like she just makes a very good tier 2 skill champion. And I feel like she's a very good pull for your first 7-star. So yeah, now let's talk about Gorr the God Butcher, because this one I was debating on tier 1 or tier 2. Now, the Gorr buff, I will say it again, is just phenomenal, right? They fixed everything they had to fix, and he just became a very good character overall. And I feel like for a 7-star, he's going to be pretty decent as well. And he only wants SIG 20, so that's another good thing, right? You just need to have him awaken once, and you'll be fine. And also, his damage output is just phenomenal. He's used a lot in Battlegrounds, especially on defense, but on offense as well, he's a good attacker. And he's just he's a very good character, in my opinion, right? He's not used the most in Alliance War attack. And Alliance War defense, he has some use there as well. he can be a very good Alliance War defender, even just unawakened, so that's good to know. And also, I feel like he's a good story quester, but like there are just better cosmic characters at story quest, you know, like Hercules, of course, Hulkling Gallon, but I feel like he does have a good role of just being like a very strong damage dealer in the cosmic class, and also just having a very good defensive value as well. So yeah, Gorr, I think he's an easy tier 2. I was thinking tier 1, but I realized that he's just not as good as like Overseer, I would say. But yeah, tier 2, still a very good placement for him overall. And now let's talk about Venom. Venom is still a very good damage dealer and like a very niche utility character, but he still can be used a lot for like his, you know, his armor break, his Spider-Man evade counter, and I feel like he's just a very good damage dealer. His relic makes him pretty good as well with like the extra damage on like the bleeds and like just his buff potency. I'm saying that because I have a 5-star dupe Venom relic, and I just like want the 7-star Venom so badly now, so I can like put the 5-star relic on the 7-star Venom. That'd be pretty cool overall. But yeah, he's used in war sometimes. When you feel like some pesky Spider-Man characters, he can be used for sure. Also, I feel like he's a decent battlegrounds attacker, not really a good defender at all, except for the SP2, which can catch a lot of people, myself included. But yeah, overall, I feel like he's a good tier 2 character because he can do a lot for you, like on the attack spectrum, and I feel like he's just a very fun champion that has some pretty good use in the game as well. So now let's talk about Guillotine 499. So Guillotine, I feel like is still a very good champion overall. I feel like that isn't really like the majority consensus, but I feel like she's still very, very good. I see her used a lot in like Karina's challenges. I see her used a lot in like, you know, Eternity Pain, which I just said. But yeah, she just has a very strong kit still to this day. The problem with her is like she needs to ramp up, which is like, it makes her not too good for battlegrounds. I feel like she can still be used in Alliance 4 attack for sure. I would love to use her in Alliance 4 attack, but mine is just a 6-star rank 3. So if I pulled a 7-star, I would be begging to use her in Alliance 4 attack. I feel like she still can handle herself in Alliance 4 very well. She's a good story quester for sure if you want to like ramp her up. And I feel like she just has a very strong kit still. She has the regen, she has her no crits, she has her degen, she has her power drain, her heal reverse, her very solid damage output when she's ramped. She just has a lot going on for her still. I feel like she's an easy tier 2 character. I was debating tier 1, but I feel like she has fallen off a little bit, so that's why she's in tier 2 for now. So yeah, overall, very strong character. Now, I already touched up on Hulk, Titania, and Joe Fixit, but I'll go over them real quickly again. Hulk is just a very good battlegrounds character. Like, his damage output is just absurd. His utility is pretty light, but the fact that he just clears battlegrounds fights so fast just makes him pretty valuable in my eyes. He also doesn't need to be awakened either, so that's a pretty good thing going for him too. And yeah, overall, I feel like he's just a very strong character. Titania, same thing. I feel like she's a very good both Alliance 4 attacker and battlegrounds attacker. Her utility is pretty like nice with the Haymaker and like the buff immunity, but I feel like it's lacking besides that. Her damage output is fine though. Just used a lot for some pretty crazy matchups I never think that she could take, but she does take them pretty well. So yeah, I feel like she's a good tier 2 character. She has her uses for sure. She has her capabilities, but I feel like she just isn't really at the tier 1 level just yet. And she also just doesn't need to be awakened either, so that's pretty good as well. Now, Joe Fixit is just a battlegrounds machine, man. He is so fast in battlegrounds. He can be using Alliance 4 attack as well. Like, if he has an attacker tactic, he just goes absolutely crazy, I feel like. His damage output is just crazy good in Battlegrounds. It's good everywhere, I feel like. Especially in just Battlegrounds, though, because, like, he can burst down fights so fast. He also wants Sig 1, but I feel like even at Sig 0, he can still be of good use for you. But yeah, his utility is pretty decent with like the Petrify and all the debuff stacking, but the fast damage output is what makes him like who he is. So I feel like he's a good tier 2 character for sure. And now let's try to go a bit faster for the tier 3 and tier 4 characters. Gambit is very good in my opinion. I feel like he's a very strong tier 3 champion. He has very easy access to like his no damage back on the medium types and special attacks. He has good immunities with his bleed. He has very good damage if he crits. The one problem with Gambit is that like, he just is so crit reliant, man. But the thing is, with stat focus, you can add crit rate on him, so that's just a very good bonus for him. His utility is okay with like the concussion and all that. With Horseman, he goes absolutely crazy, but I feel like Horseman these days is a bit impractical, so that's why I put him in tier 3 for now. Maybe as like we see him progress as a 7-star, he'll go up to tier 2. But for now, I'll keep him at tier 3 and see just go from there, right? If Sauron wasn't a decent defender, he'd be a tier 4 for sure. He's such a letdown, man. Like, his damage output is serviceable. His utility is so light. He has double immunities, and that's literally it. His signature ability is okay, but you want him... I mean, you want him to Sig 1, so, like, it's fair to say, like, to like give him some credit for the signature ability, but it's just not that important, man. And he just sucks. He just really does suck. He's a decent defender though in Battlegrounds, so like you might catch some people with an unawakened Sauron. He doesn't need to be awakened for his defensive use, so there is that. So yeah, he's a tier 3 character, man. But he's a low tier 3 character. He honestly is just terrible. If he wasn't a dinosaur, I would just despise him. But he's a dinosaur, so I kind of love him. It's a love-hate relationship. I don't want to talk about it. But now let's talk about Storm X. So Storm X is a pretty decent character. I feel like OG Storm kind of like, overshadows her for sure. But she still can do a lot on her own. Like, she has good damage output. Her utility's kind of alright with her immunities. But, like, besides that, there's not much going on with the character. She's very crit reliant, though. But then again, there is stat focus for the crit rating. So, yeah, she will be helped a lot by stat focus. So, we'll see how she progresses as a 7-star as well. Maybe she'll go up a tier like Gambit will in, like, the future. Who knows? And yeah, overall, there's a lot of potential with her, and I'm very excited to see how she grows as a 7-star. Gamora has like no utility, but her damage output is just super good, especially in like higher tier fights and like Battlegrounds. I feel like she can be a pretty good attacker there as well, especially as a 7-star, man. That should be a very, very fun time, I feel like. So yeah, I can't wait to see how she performs as a 7-star. I feel like she's gonna be a pretty useful one overall, especially in like Battlegrounds attack. But I love her as a 7-star because she's one of those characters where like you want to rank her up, but there's just so many other champions to do over her. But now as a 7-star, you'll just immediately have a 6-star rank for Gamora, and that's just going to be pretty fun to play around with. So yeah, I cannot wait to see how she performs as a 7-star. And now let's talk about Silver Surfer. Prestige. But in all seriousness, he's a very good attacker on his own. He has some nice immunities. His damage output is pretty serviceable as well. At high sig, his damage output becomes very, very good, but we can't have that just yet. But I know he'll be prioritized a lot by whales to like max sig. But yeah, overall, I feel like he's a pretty decent character in Battlegrounds. His prestige, of course, is his biggest use, but I love the character because I think he just has like the prettiest animations, man. He's just so cool. He does have like some good offensive use, but for now I'm gonna keep it at tier 3 because he was made for prestige, of course, but there are still some things like about the character, especially like the immunities. And now let's talk about Terrax. Now, Terrax is a fine character. His damage output is pretty decent with ramp up. His defensive use is all about the signature ability and having it like at a high sig. So yeah, that's why he's in tier 3 for now, because if he's like low sig, he can still be a okay defender, but you kind of just wanted to have him at max sig for that very potent rockfield at the start of the fight. But yeah, besides that, he has some nice immunities. His damage output is pretty okay, and I feel like he isn't the worst 7-star to pull, but he really does want to be awakened, so just keep that in mind if you do get him. I know the first ever 7-star is Terrax, and it's won by like G Studios 28, so congrats to him. He has one part of the puzzle complete, and I feel like that's a very good 7-star to get like as a giveaway because you didn't use shards on him, right? You just have a free 7-star Terrax who has a lot of potential overall as you build up your 7-star roster. So yeah, props to him for winning that, man. Huge congrats once again to GCO 28. And now let's talk about Hawkeye. Oh wait, we're gonna talk about Hawkeye, so now let's talk about Killmonger. He's a very solid character still to this day, I feel like, but it all lies within the signature ability to be like very, very good, because the signature ability gives him a ton of damage output, and he really does need that to be like a viable attacker. And it also gives him the reverb, which is just like his most important defensive piece. So yeah, at like low sig he'll be okay, but he really wants max sig, and that's just super unfortunate because like it's a 7-star, man. We can't have that. We cannot have that for like a 7-star character to need max sig. That is just absurd, man. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate, but Killmonger, he still has some nice utility if you get him unawakened. At Sig 20, he'll be pretty good overall, I feel like. But at 600, he's just going to be a very good 7-star for sure. But yeah, kind of unfortunate. But now let's talk about the controversial one, which is Mantis. I'm not buying it with her. I just don't see it with Mantis. I know she has a lot of fans, but I just don't see it. Like, her damage output is pretty good in Battlegrounds, but that's literally it. Everywhere else, she just, like, sucks completely. Her utility is so light. Her utility is literally 2 lines. It is Infuriate and Intimidate and Tranquilize. That's literally it. She has nothing else going for her. Her utility is so light that like her best use, which is Battlegrounds, can get offset because of her lack of utility. Like, there's a lot of nodes in this like Battlegrounds and like the past Battleground season where like she just does not work because she doesn't fit the node. And it's like, why design a Battlegrounds character with like such little utility? Like, at least Hulk can just burst down fights super fast, but like Mantis has a very like demanding playstyle for her, so she just doesn't work most of the times. I feel like she also has like zero use in Alliance War in both attack and defense because she has a Corvus charge. There's just so many things that aren't going well for this character, and I just cannot wait for the buff, because right now she is just an absolute mess of a champion. I just don't think she is that good at all. I would not be happy with this pool. She is the one champion that I do not want at all, because I feel like she just isn't that great in general. I feel like there's just a lot better characters in her. Like, I feel like tier 3 is perfect for her. I was debating tier 4, but I feel like that's just too mean, because she can be used, she can be good at times, but for the most part, she's just a pretty big letdown, I feel like. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Mantis. If you disagree, it's whatever. I just don't see it with this character, man. I just do not see it with Mantis. I feel like she's just a major letdown. Seeing her at the same tier as Hawkeye is a bit disappointing, but it's just because she can be used sometimes, and I guess in Battleground's defense, she can be annoying with like the SP1 like sleep thing. So yeah, whatever, man. Now let's talk about Mangog, a champion that I actually love. I love Mangog so much. This will cheer me up for sure. Mangog is a very solid defender at low sig. At no sig, actually. He doesn't need the signature ability for his defensive use. Additionally, he just has some pretty good utility overall, but I feel like he isn't the best attacker out there, by himself at least. With synergies, he goes crazy, man. He goes so crazy, but I try to make this like about no synergies, to be honest, because I feel like synergies are kind of losing value as the game progresses into a more like Battlegrounds Alliance War type of feel, right? But with synergies, he just goes absolutely haywire, man. So just keep that in mind. He can be like tier 2 if I factored in synergies, but since I didn't, he's gonna stay at tier 3. Still a very good pool for defense, and he does have some use by himself on like the offensive side. So yeah, Sasquatch, low sig, just has no defensive value at all. I guess he still has like the sun immunity on the Wrath of Terrax, but besides that, like, there really isn't much going on for the champion. He's a decent attacker though, like, for sure. I feel like he's a very good attacker actually with like his burst damage, but it's just like it all depends on crits. But stat focus with the crit rate, he should be popping off, man. So honestly, he might go to tier 2 like as time progresses, because I feel like he'll be a lot more valuable than people think on attack. So yeah, Sasquatch, I have hopes. I have high hopes for Sasquatch, man. Now let's talk about Wong. I do not like this character at all, because I feel like he was just so overhyped, and that overhyped just made me hate the character. His buff control is pitiful. His ramp up time is atrocious. There is just very little good about this guy. The energy damage regen is decent, but like, there is just, this guy is very, very bad in my opinion, and I feel like he should have been the first tune-up for the balance program, but Gambit was like, no, screw this guy in particular, and it's just like, dang, that's a bit rough. But yeah, Wong, he's a good defender though at 6-0, so yeah, just you pull him once, he'll be a good defender, and you have that going for you at least. At 6-0, he's a pretty like okay attacker, I guess I'll give him that much, but yeah, besides that, I don't know, man. Wong, bit of a letdown for sure. And now let's talk about Shuri. I've been recording this video for like 28 minutes, and that's like the average fight time for Shuri. But in all seriousness, her damage output is a problem, of course. I know that she's getting buffed and that's getting fixed, but even like post buff, I feel like she still isn't too valuable in the most important pieces of content, you know, like Battlegrounds, Alliance War, even story questing. I wouldn't say she's that good, because her damage output, it looks decent post buff, but it just, I feel like you just won't use her because her damage output is decent, but it's still not great, right? And her utility isn't even that good. It's replaceable. It's so replaceable, man. Like, she does nothing the best. So you pair that, like, replaceable utility with, like, some pretty mediocre damage, and you just have this very, like, disappointing champion overall. I feel like even post-buff, I'm not going to be too fussed about getting her. So yeah, like, pretty big letdown. On defense, she's okay, unless the opponent has Gal, and then you're kind of just done for, because that's like a 20-something second fight. But yeah, she has some use on defense, so that's why she's tier 3. And she's not the worst on attack either, so that's why she's also tier 3. But yeah, very, very, like, stuck in tier 3 character. I feel like she won't, like, leave that tier for a while unless she gets, like, a massive buff. Her current buff looks okay at best, but she needs another one, man. And now let's talk about Raccoon. Speaking of buffs, this guy, I might put him at tier 2. Because he's honestly a pretty solid champion overall, and with stat focus, his one problem is getting fixed, right? You can add block efficiency to him, and he just becomes a much better champion overall. His utility is pretty decent with like the armor break, the heal block, the very strong damage output. Like once you get even just like 10 hits in, he just starts hitting very, very hard. His utility, like I said, is pretty good with like the armor break, the heal block, and the power drain. It's kind of like a budget warlock type of thing. But yeah, maybe as we see stat focus like help him a lot, he'll go up to tier 2, but for now I feel like he's a pretty good tier 3 character. Definitely at the top of tier 3, I would say. Now Mysterio was one I was like debating tier 3 or tier 2, but I went with tier 3 because I feel like he just has lost quite a bit of value over time, but he's still a very strong champion. Like his damage output is still pretty absurd after the SP3. His utility is pretty nice with like the heal block and like the power drain and the miss mechanic as well, and the damage reflection is pretty decent too, but it's just like a bunch of quirky stuff on a champion that like has a pretty noticeable amount of ramp up time. So yeah, I feel like he's just a tier 3 character now these days. If he was like higher sig, maybe he'd be tier 2, but we can't have that with 7 stars. So yeah, tier 3 it is for now for Mysterio, but I feel like he's still a pretty nice pool overall if you do get him. Now we have WMachine, who's like a bit of the same thing. Like his utility is pretty much decent at best. His damage output takes a pretty like noticeable amount of ramp up time, and besides that, there's just isn't really much going on for the champion. He doesn't need to be Wiccan though, so that's pretty good. But the thing is, like, he just does nothing the best. He does have the pre-fight though, which is okay, but there's also like the 5-star, 6-star version for that as well. So yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like WMachine, not the best pool to get. He can do some things for you if you do pull him, but he's not going to be one that people are like most excited for, right? That's how I feel anyways. Now I already talked about Spider-Gwen and Spider-Man, so we can talk about the tier 4 characters. I would like to say though, I think Spider-Man is like the top of tier 3, like at the very high spectrum of tier 3, like on the brink of tier 2, but not there just yet. Maybe over time I'll put him there, but for now, tier 3, like I said. Now we have tier 4, also known as the stinky pool, because these guys are pretty much very stinky to pull as your first 7-star. Iron Infinity War, just not a good champion overall, I feel like. He's also a lot of value over time. He's not a hard defender these days with like all the counters that he has, and he won 6200 to be a good defender as well, so there's just very little going for this guy. He had a buff which is so unnoticeable that like it was a joke. It was a joke buff. Still a tier 4 character. Maybe like no, there's just I don't know, man. I don't know how you can fix this guy. Like there's just he's so mediocre, right? His ramp up time is atrocious. His utility is decent at best. Like the evade counter is pretty decent and the immunities as well, but like besides that, he just doesn't really have much. And just the defensive use, he wants to be like a pretty medium sig for it. Like at sig 20 it can work, but he won't. Don't expect him to like be that powerful in defense if he's low sig, is what I'm trying to say. Now we have Venom the Duck, and it's just like, what the heck were they thinking? Why would they add Venom the Duck, man? Like he is so like he's just not used at all anymore, I feel like. He doesn't get used in Battleground attack, defense, alliance war attack, alliance war defense, story questing. None of the 5 important pieces of content he's used for. Sometimes he has like use in an alliance quest, but like as an alliance quest, man. And incursions he can be used sometimes as well, but like there's just so much better, I feel like. But he is very, very fun, so I hope that he does get buffed, so like he'll be a very good pool for a 7-star. But right now it's just a very fun pool, and for your first 7-star, I feel like you want something that's actually useful over fun. But who knows, man? If you're into that, which I honestly am, so I would not mind this guy as my first 7-star because I love fun champions, but I'd rather have, like, you know, a fun but good character, like Dragon Man, you know? And now there's Korg. So Korg I love so much. He's so much fun to play, especially with, like, synergies and all that. But he really wants 6200 for, like, the defensive use, which is his best use by far. So, yeah, needing 6200 just makes him a very, like, bad pool for a 7-star. I feel like he will not be loved at all by, like, most people that pull him as their first 7-star. So, yeah. His utility is okay, his damage output is not that great by himself, and his defensive use is locked by 200 sigs. So yeah, not the best first 7-star for sure. And we did it, y'all. That was my first tier list video. 36 characters, 34 minutes. I talked a ton there, man. My voice is so dry now, but it was a ton of fun. Let me know your thoughts on this video. If you want to see me do another one, if you want me to like do it live, like on a live stream, let me know and I'll gladly do it. But yeah, this is just a ton of fun to make. I really hope that y'all like the tier list and like y'all just like the video overall, because this is just a ton of fun, right? This is just for fun. This is just my opinion, and it's just a very fun time for like the community to just get together and just go over this list that I made. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on the list. Let me know your thoughts on the 7-star pool. And yeah, I'll see you later tonight or later tomorrow for my nighttime episode. And yeah, that's about it for me.